everybody. Thank you so much for coming out to our group author reading. This reading is brought to you by Strong Women, Strange Worlds, which is a group of authors supporting authors. Our mission is to elevate the voices of women and other underrepresented gender identity authors of science fiction, fantasy, and horror through events like our bi-monthly virtual quick read sessions. You can find out more about Strong Women, Strange Worlds in the handout that's going to be popping up in your chat periodically throughout this event, and also by visiting the website. This link will also appear in the event. It is strongwomenstrangeworlds.weebly.com. You will find those links in the chat later. I'm going to be your host today. My name is Elaine Isaak, and you can find out more about me in the provided handout. Just a little note here for administrative purposes. Recording of this session by the audience is not allowed. Recording of electronic communications, including Zoom meetings and webinars without permission, is illegal. That's why that little box shows up on your screen, so you're all aware that we are recording you for official Strong Women purposes. Today we're beginning featuring 6 authors: Denise Crittendon, Diana Sanchez, Julie C. Day, Casey Grifant, Delizhia Jenkins, and Sarena Ulibarri. Each author will have 8 minutes to read. Our first reader today is Denise Crittendon. An award-winning journalist, Denise Crittendon is a former staff writer for the Detroit News and past editor of the NAACP magazine, The Crisis. The author of teen self-help manuals, Denise's debut science fiction novel is Where It Rains in Color. She divides her time between Spring Valley, Nevada, and Detroit. Denise, take it away.
Thank you so much, Elaine. The passage that I'm going to read is on an asteroid. My beautiful protagonist, Lalila, has left her wonderful resort planet, and she's now living on an asteroid because she's seeking a cure. And in this scene, she's beginning to discover her abilities to enter the souls of her ancestors. Her mind went into a fog. Brian looked behind him and waved for her to come stand beside him. She was beginning to be able to hear private thoughts now. In Brian's, she could hear that his desire to protect her was causing him to ache. Internally, he was saying that he and Martor would stay by her side. But the fog in her brain triggered a heaviness she couldn't escape. Instead, she plunged back into the reverie of the Dogon dancers and bounded through their village with them. Lalila stretched a tall and gangly body toward the sun, letting sweat trickle down an unkempt beard. Infused within the form of a middle-aged male drummer, she pounded and stomped. There was a fury in each pound, a joyous ferocity in each wave of her arm. Tribal dancers bounced around her in circles, their chants making her giddy. An imposing drummer swayed his hips and pivoted toward her and shouted, "Hogan, she is here, she is here." A crowd of women squealed and ululated. Children romped past and shrieked, "Hogan, Hogan," until he appeared, an elder with skin as taut as leather and glints of soft light framing his countenance. He walked up to Lalila and bowed. "You have come," he said, skipping introductions. "Thank the ancestors, for you have come." "You know me?" Lalila asked. She kept her jaw clenched and flexed her calf muscles as she tried to get comfortable in the body of a man. The Hogan gently took her hand. "You stand before me as a warrior drummer, but you are our daughter of tomorrow, who sends us strength from beyond the thousands of years ahead." He said, "Now you have come, our daughter, as proof of the world that awaits, as proof that the ancestors never fail and that the juju will always work." Though he spoke in an ancient tongue of the Dogon, Lalila heard it as English and instinctively knew what it meant. In his hand were misshapen seeds, much like the ones enchanted by Fajr, but brighter and more robust. He scattered the seeds on the ground in front of Lalila, but instead of vegetation, an image appeared of a planet and skies bathed in striking colors. "This world will be our own," the Hogan shouted to the crowd, "and we will take with us the teachings of Potolo." While the crowd cheered, the Hogan opened his other hand and revealed 2 tarnished bronze pendants, one bearing the image of a striped eel and the other covered with intertwined leaves. Rare one, the Hogan said. This is our juju medicine. Have you seen these anywhere in your world? When Lalila said no, the Hogan loosened his grip on the pendants. They are a hidden magic, and it is good that they are not used in your great city. He observed her closely. There was a ghost-like outline of the real Lalila flowing from the crown of the drummer's head. Your presence is strong, the Hogan said, but the warrior whose body you have assumed does sleep in his spirit now and has no awareness of your mark within him. When he awakens, he will know you as a dream and will have the benefits and knowledge that your energy has left behind. You have given us hope by coming here from the many-colored soil. You are our truth. What truth? Who are you? Lalila asked. And how do you know me? I know you because of the glow that never leaves you and the haze of the seer's eyes in your spirit, in your eyes, he answered. I am the Hogan, the one who recognizes all spirits and advises healers of the village. And I am the chief of this village. My name is Tanomo, and I will be the founder of Swazembi. Lalila gasped, and the man's body she inhabited nearly fainted. The bronze stone bearing the creature gives me powers, said Hogan to Nomo, and this, the coiled pendant, is medicine for protection. I use them both in my rituals to call out to Potolo, and I ask that one be sent from the farthest shores of the sky to show us the glory that is to be. He held the tools higher. I use these with the powerful herbs Rooibos and Boko. I threw the cowrie shells in a circle while I entered a Nekotep trances. The Hogan nodded and pointed to a white light spiraling around two animal rib cages that lay on the ground at a distance of no more than 7 or 8 meters. Lalila's face twitched, and he gently touched her chin. It frightens you now, this energy that pierces through bones. But Potolo has shown me that this light will become wind, and this wind will sail through your city and allow you to fly like birds in the sky, he said. For the Dogon who choose to leave this land, that wind tunnel is like the sea that bears the great ships. It will take us to our new home. Hogan Tanomo kneeled in the sand and with one finger drew the figure of a being shaped like the Ite-Ire clams of Wimbia. We asked for a sign and we have received it, he said. Pressing the medicine pendants against his heart, he stood and beheld a scattering of villagers who waved at him from the hovels carved into the high cliffs. The rare one has beckoned, he announced. It is time. Lalila eased toward the burning light, and her spirit was immediately catapulted back onto the grounds where she still stood next to Brian. But her senses had traversed many realities, and because of it, her mind had wearied. And her surroundings, the pond, the boulders, the clap ship, seemed to flash in and out of her awareness. Ahead, she thought she could see Myrna Style and hear her announcing that it was time for the daily Mecca to be dispensed. But her scratchy voice was vague, drowned out by the clash of competing commands that were making Lalila lightheaded. She had to pick one and tune in. Run, run, Lalila, run now. Ahanate? On swift feet, she did as she was told, running and listening as Ahanate's guidance squeezed itself between the spaces of her own private thoughts. And I think that's 8 minutes. Okay.
Wow. Thank you so much. That was fascinating. Really enjoyed getting to know that character in such a striking situation that she finds herself in. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Our next reader is Diana Sanchez. Diana Sanchez is the not-so-secret identity of Janice Amina, author of the Enchanted Kitchen series of middle-grade fantasy novels. A Hispanic geek originally from New Mexico, she now lives in the Boston area with her husband and 2 daughters. Diana, over to you.
Yes, I will be reading from An Elf's Equations, the third in a series, including Witch's Kitchen and A Pixie's Promise, and I will be giving away a first edition copy of A Witch's Kitchen to folks in the US or an EPUB version to folks overseas. And I'm just going to read from the first chapter. Here we go. Sagara crept through the sylvan vale easily, even though it was the middle of the night and she was only 5 years old. It helped that she had the route memorized. She counted her steps, 57 steps to the next beech tree, its inhabitants sleeping peacefully in the branches above her, then 38 steps to a great oak tree, then another 41 steps brought her to the edge of a meadow. The moon shone brightly, filling the meadow like a bowl filled with milk. Elves stood in a ring on the edge, quiet but uneasy, shifting from foot to foot in their formal robes. Sagara could not see over or through them, but she knew someone stood in the center of the ring. No crickets or frogs sang, no owl or banshee shrieked. The silence worried her. Even the trees were quiet, and their stillness had nothing to do with the lack of wind. They leaned in, observing. Everyone was so intent on the figure in the center that no one noticed a little elf out of bed and slipping between the tall adults until she found the person she was looking for. Coming up behind him, she tugged on his robes. "Kieran," she whispered. Her brother, 12 years older, turned, his eyes widening when he saw her. "Sagara," he hissed, "you shouldn't be here. Why aren't you in bed?" "I want to see," Sagara said. "How did you get past Aunt Nanda? I thought she was watching you." "Easy," Sagara told him. "I just climbed down the home tree." Kieran raised his eyebrows. "Arla let you do that?" "Home tree helped me," Sagara told him. Kieran sighed. They both knew Arla, their home tree, had a soft spot for Sagara. She was forever escaping and dashing off into the enchanted forest, but the trees watched out for her and always made sure she came back home. The trees knew what was happening that night, of course, and they had brought her, or at least not stopped her, nor sounded an alarm. Kieran took Sagara's hand. "Then perhaps you are meant to be here." He pulled her forward, ignoring the disapproving glances of the other elves, and placed her in front of him, where she could clearly see their mother, standing alone in the center of the ring. She wore the simple, brown, unadorned robes of the accused. Opposite her, the elf moot stood just a little forward of the rest of the ring, 5 ancient elves of high standing who would oversee her mother's trial. Sagara spotted her grandmother among them, wearing her most formal robe, so stiff and proper that when she moved, she seemed like a pillar gliding over the moonlit grass. "Lilia ap Arla," Gran said, as though speaking the name pained her. "You are charged with dangerous experimentation and consorting with technology. We have seen the evidence of your transgressions." She pointed to a jumbled heap of twisted metal and wire, so smashed Sagara couldn't even guess what the contents had been. "You have confessed to using them and to dabbling in forbidden magic, and you—" "I did not," Sagara's mother interrupted. A murmur rose in the ring. "You did not?" asked Gran. "We all heard you. You told us of your experiments, of your excursions into the logical realm, and of your transgressive spells." Lilia snorted. "I did not confess because I maintained that I did nothing wrong. There are no laws stating that I may not use technology, no rules forbidding me from the logical realm. Indeed, we send emissaries there on a regular basis to rescue endangered creatures." Another of the moots stepped forward. "There have been no laws against technology because it is a new creation of the logical humans, one we had not realized we needed to shield against." Sagara's mother laughed. "There, you see, I have committed no crime." For one moment, Sagara believed that everything would be fine. Her mother would come home and everything would go back to normal. Gran stomped her foot and the ring fell silent. "You have transgressed," she said. Her voice was soft, but Sagara could see that she was shaking with anger. "You have disobeyed our deepest customs and traditions, those that say new magics must be introduced gradually and with great caution. And you have disobeyed our injunctions against traffic with the logical realm. Though we do venture there to perform acts of mercy, every emissary receives the same warning. Do not be seduced by the ways of humans, for they caused the sundering from the world tree and from magic." "We don't know that," Mama said evenly. "There's no proof." "That is not a risk we should ever take," Gran thundered. Mama rocked back on her heels, and even the trees pulled back their outstretched branches. Your unauthorized experimentation puts us all at risk. Anything that might cause the displeasure and disapproval of the World Tree must be avoided at all costs. A murmur of approval went up around the meadow. Many of the elves glared angrily at Mama. She rallied. Have you asked it? Mama said. Have you asked the World Tree if it disapproves? Have you asked why it chose to withdraw from the logical realm? Don't be absurd, grated another elf of the moot, so old his skin seemed transparent in the moonlight. We would never impose upon the World Tree. We are its servants, not its inquisitors. Mama tossed back her long silvery hair. I asked, she said. I went to the World Tree and I asked for its approval. What? Preposterous, such arrogance. The entire circle erupted in shouting and disbelief. Kieran clenched Sagara's hand so tightly she lost feeling in her fingers, but she scarcely noticed. Don't you want to know how the World Tree responded? Mama called out, and immediately everyone fell silent again. It was amused. I heard no words, but I felt a deep sense of curiosity and interest, not disapproval, not rejection. I took that as permission to proceed. That was the last straw for Gran. You presumptuous, flighty, malicious little twit, she spat at Mama. How dare you address the World Tree without permission? We betrayed our trust we placed in you as a guardian. You ignored the rules and defied the moot. How can we trust a single thing you say? Gran spun around and addressed the moot. We must find her guilty, or we set a dangerous precedent. What happens when anyone thinks they can just walk up to the World Tree and start asking questions? When anyone can ignore our rules? I charge you, judge her guilty. The ancient elf nodded, guilty, then the next, and the next. The fourth member of the moot, a tiny withered female, said, Your own daughter, Lobelia? Especially my own, Gran replied through clenched teeth. The elf sighed and then said, Guilty then.
Wow, way to leave us hanging, Diana. Nice work. People were really enjoying that one. It's a very tense scene, and you have some great details in there that really enable us to view what's going on. Very cool. Thank you so much. Our third reader today is Julie C. Day. Julie C. Day's novella, The Rampant, is a Lambda Award finalist. Her collection, Uncommon Miracles, was praised by Nathan Ballingrud, John Crowley, and Kelly Link. She's published stories in magazines such as Podcastle, The Dark, and the Cincinnati Review. She is series editor and publisher of the Dreams Anthology series. Julie, take it away.
Be on mute. There we go. Now I've got the timer already started, so we're good. I'm going to read from my upcoming story coming out in Black Static called Whole Bodies Are Never Left Behind. Reaching the ocean. The house slumped across its lot, a worn-out carcass, stretches of graying wooden bone exposed. After 7 highways in 6 states, the 3 of them, Minnow, Mama, and Annabelle, had finally reached Cape Cod, Massachusetts, just as Mama had promised they would. This place was what Great Uncle Tobias called his rental property, whatever its name. Definitely wasn't their real home. It's okay, Annabelle. Clutching the cat to his chest, Minnow stared at the house. He pressed his lips against one of her flattened ears, breathing in her oily, dry fur scent. But even Annabelle couldn't disguise the musty odor of rot and salt water that flooded in from all directions. Minnow understood that everything died. As Mama kept reminding him, it was basic biology. Just another one of those textbook facts of yours, Minnow. Still, he felt uneasy. Words could hide as much as they revealed, especially Mama's words. You're going to love it, Minnow, Mama had said before they got into the U-Haul and drove away from Kentucky, and everything he'd ever known. Cross my heart. Cape Cod is surrounded by ocean, nothing like dusty old Russellville. Pretty soon you won't even remember this town. Like most people Minnow met, Mama acted as though she could promise away all the hard stuff, especially those bodies that rested beneath the Maple Grove Cemetery. Getting back to normal, called it. Moving on. Minnow's Campbell Biology 12th edition textbook was just the same. College level, Mama had said, sounding strangely proud when she paid for his class. Yet 1,263 pages later, Minnow had uncovered no more than 4 pages on mass extinction events, and just a scattering of paragraphs on detritivores and their consumption of non-living organic material, followed by a brief mention of nutrition cycle or nutrient cycle. The word death didn't appear even once in the book. As it turned out, despite 6 authors' worth of scientific text, it was easier to pretend all those people, those dead and gone people, were nothing more than a substrate where new life could breed. Grandpa never tried to lie. And now he didn't have that choice. Grandpa no longer had lips or a tongue or that strange folding organ called a brain. A biological fact. One day, Minnow's tendons and muscles would separate and his soft tissues would entirely fall away. Bones revealed, just like Grandpa. That's what graveyards and dead relatives and all those headstones in the Maple Grove Cemetery were all about. The call of bone to bone. Yet, somehow, one state line after another, Mama kept promising it all away. And now here she stood on the street in front of their new home, battling the U-Haul's ramp, oblivious to the rotting truth. Cape Cod was nothing but an oceanic graveyard. It sent an endless scream of, please remember me. No matter what Mama said, Russellville and the Maple Grove Cemetery had definitely not been left behind. God damn it to hell. Mama kicked the truck's rear bumper with one sandaled foot, then winced as she stubbed her toe. I thought you said I shouldn't swear, Minnow said. Sorry, baby. Mama glanced his way, pushed her long, sweat-soaked hair from her forehead. This kind of stuff makes me totally crazy. That's why you let Grandpa do it. Right. Well, not anymore. Mama turned back to the truck. Minnow tightened his grip on Annabelle, felt the solidity of her ribs and vertebrae, along with the vibration of her low and growl. I got this. Just watch. Mama bent down yet again and yanked on the ramp's handle one more time. The ramp groaned its resistance, then shuddered, as though fighting her living touch. Then, finally, the aluminum frame shook loose, the ramp sliding all the way to the cracked tarmac of Archer Street. All right. Mama pumped her fist. Did you see that, baby? Did you? Home sweet home. She stepped inside the truck, grabbed a cardboard box, and carried it down the ramp. Despite the optimistic words, her smile looked stiff, lips, muscles, and collagen fighting to maintain an upward tilt. Perhaps he and Grandpa weren't the only ones to recognize Mama's lies. The plan, Mama called her story. The plan was to head toward the ocean and only stop once we almost tumble in. She said their new life on Cape Cod was going to be a vacation all year long. But words were like ligaments, they twisted beneath the skin. In all those hours in the truck, there'd been no mention of putrid ocean smells and enraged Annabelle's poised to run. Minnow wasn't surprised. Adult promises were useless things. Except for Grandpa's. Maybe that's why Mama had hated him so much. Urgh. Annabelle dug her claws into Minnow's chest, then bared her teeth and hissed. Mama, I need to lock her inside. Minnow stopped. What to say? How to explain? Here at their new house, instead of normal things like gravel or asphalt, crushed bits of shell covered the short driveway. Fragments of death piled atop one another. What? She might cut herself. The driveway looks sharp. Minnow shrugged, glanced away. It's just broken oyster shells, Minnow. You like seashells. Mama walked past him toward the house, box clasped in her arms. I really need you to put Annabelle down and grab something from the truck. You're 12 now, more than big enough to help. Minnow frowned, noting the red starbursts on his t-shirt, blood welling up from his Annabelle scratches. Then he shrugged and kissed the top of her furry head. Their new house was strange, small, with a steeply pitched roof that Mama called Cape style. Capes were for superheroes, That's what Minnow thought. And all those Marvel movies definitely agreed. But in this place, Kate Style described a driveway filled with white and gray calcified remains. Best buried and forgotten. That's what Mama had said to Great Uncle Tobias the night after Grandpa's funeral procession along Russellville's Main Street, the gaping rectangular hole in the ground. Minnow was supposed to be asleep upstairs. His bedroom windows stood open, the windowsill filled with all those whole and unblemished shells Uncle Tobias had brought back to Kentucky whenever he visited his hometown. The spiraling turret's shell and the handful of periwinkles, the rough textured clamshell and the oversized conch. Yet another biological fact found in the Campbell's Biology 12th edition. Shells held the shape of each living creature, snail or mollusk, even after scavengers had consumed their flesh. And that's where I'll stop. Okay.
Wow. I don't even know what to say. That was beautiful and disturbing and fascinating and rich with all the stuff. So thank you very much for that reading. That was great.
Thank you.
So, and now for something probably quite different. Our fourth reader today is K.C. Grifant. K.C. Grifant is an author based in Southern California who writes internationally published horror, fantasy, science fiction, and Weird West stories. In addition to her debut novel, Melinda West, Monster Gunslinger, her stories have appeared in dozens of anthologies, magazines, and podcasts. Casey, take it away.
Thanks for having me as a guest today. So I'll be reading from Melinda West, Monster Gunslinger, a dark fantasy horror set in the Old West. And this story takes place in an alternate history where monsters poured into the region and this Bonnie and Clyde-like duo roamed the land to offer their exterminating services. And this book was published yesterday by Bridget's Gate Press. And I'm going to start with chapter 1. Melinda never missed, not in her 29 years on this earth. But then again, she never dealt with giant flying scorpions before. She aimed at the two shapes above a cactus several hundred feet away, fired, and watched as one of the bodies dropped. Aside from being bigger than any insect on this earth ought to be, the scorpion's 6 back legs were webbed, giving them the oh-so-handy ability to become airborne. A calf-sized one flew through the air with its green-tipped tail poised directly towards her head. She slid behind a toppled boulder, dust whipping up and stinging her eyes as the scorpion soared past, pincers outstretched. Its back legs brushed the tip of her wide-brimmed hat, caught a draft, and swept back toward her like a giant leaf in the wind. 4 sets of white eyes alongside its orange head fixed on Melinda as it came back around. She sucked in a breath and fired her pistol again, praying the wind wouldn't shift. The bullet tore through the insect's shell, ripping open its soft insides. Its chitin shattered like it was made of fine china. Bright green goo splattered on the cacti and rocks around her. "These bugs ain't joking," Lance huffed as he crouched down next to Melinda, his brown hat askew. The grooves along his mouth deepened as he rooted in his knapsack for a weapon, the blondish stubble on his chin dark with dust. "Never seen this many air scorpions before in one place, except in pictures. Looks like their guts will sting something awful." "Poisonous, no doubt," Melinda said. "Aunt Beatrice sure would love a sample." "Bullets?" "Almost out," Lance said, and hoisted his rifle. "Bombs?" she asked. "Just the one," Lance said, as they both peered over the edge of the hill at the sharp drop leading to the mine. Hundreds of the orange and beige insects scuttled out of the mine entrance, agitated, it seemed, by Melinda and Lance's presence. The gash in the side of the hill was flanked by a steep rise in the earth around it, creating a bowl into which the scorpions poured. One of the creatures lifted its webbed legs to catch a gust of wind blowing toward them. Before it could take flight, Lance's shot rang out, exploding the bug into green goo. The rest of the scorpions in the pile chittered and clanked their pincers. Though they had seen plenty of odd creatures in their line of work, this sound was one Melinda was sure would haunt her dreams. "We shouldn't have used all the bombs up in Old Rivers," Melinda said, and tucked a dark strand of hair back into her hat as Lance passed her the tacky bomb, one of Abel's inventions. It did a pretty good number on those fire cattle, though, Lance said. Splattered their guts like fireworks. Want me to toss? Who has better aim? Melinda responded. Lance chuckled and handed her the air-pressured blaster in the shape of a clunky gun. She said about the tedious process of loading it with the tacky bomb, a trap of hammered metal housing a custom explosive. Hooves thundered behind them. The local sheriff who had summoned them, named Gatsum or Gary or something like that, Melinda couldn't remember which, scrambled off his horse. He stared aghast at the mine, his badge flashing like a beacon in the morning sun. What do we do? The sheriff shouted, his eyes wide as his Mustang's spots. He peered at the pit. Lordy help us. We got to evacuate. We're ruined. I told that Carson not to blow a hole in this godforsaken land. Couldn't wait for his hermit of an uncle to die so he could start mining. Easy, partner, Lance said. We've dealt with bigger bads than this, believe it or not. Any bug can be squashed, and we're the ones to do it. What did they want? The sheriff asked and wiped his forehead before replacing his hat. Sometimes critters get it in their heads to look for greener pastures, Lance said, so they wander out from the edge. We don't know much about that here, the sheriff sniffed. Melinda understood. Some folks didn't want to say the edge out loud from superstition. They did the best they could to ignore that no man's land of monsters nestled in the northern mountains. Even so, plenty of creatures swarmed out from the edge, taking up residence in the pockets of hills or lakes or wherever they could find food, but never this far south. First time we've seen critters this big way out in the dustlands, Melinda said. You got any idea why they ventured so far? Or how? Something disturbed them, maybe, Lance mused. Don't matter none, the sheriff huffed. We'll teach him. He reached down towards his saddle and yanked out a mallet nearly the size of the horse's leg. Mighty fine-looking hammer, but I wouldn't do that, Lance said. Their blood's got a sting. The sheriff moaned. They're coming out. Melinda turned her sights back on the pit of squirming scorpions, more of which poured out of the entrance. She breathed, and the tiny muscles around her eyes relaxed. She fired the blaster, sending the tacky bomb soaring through the air. It stuck along the top of the wooden frame of the mining entrance. Melinda pulled out her rifle and steadied, putting the explosive in her sights. The mix of Abel's unique concoction of compressed gunpowder cake and one of his experimental potions would make the tacky bomb consume everything, natural or unnatural, in its path. So long, suckers, she thought. You picked the wrong place to nest. Hurry, the sheriff said, as a fresh wave of scorpions crawled out of the mining entrance. A few lifted themselves up as the wind picked up again. What are you waiting for? He shouted. One thing, Melinda said. Got our payment? But they're about to swarm, the sheriff sputtered. Let's see it, she said, without moving. What in Lord's name is she waiting for? The sheriff shouted. I'll do it myself. Lance spat out a small gob of tobacco. Most people can't make that shot there. I'd be surprised if I could, he said. Okay, your money's right here, the sheriff said, and pulled out the envelope wrapped in twine. Melinda waited until she heard Lance rip it open and the sound of his satisfied breath. She took the shot. Okay, that's my reading. If you enjoyed this or want to find out what happens, the book came out yesterday, and I'll be doing a giveaway. For a US winner, I'll send out one signed paperback, and then for an international winner, I'll have a digital copy to share. Thank you.
That was fantastic. That was like a great fusion of the Western atmosphere with some crazy goings on. Sounds like an awesome book, and congratulations on the launch. Our fifth reader today is Delizhia Jenkins. Delizhia Jenkins is an urban fantasy and paranormal romance author who currently resides in Inglewood, California. The love of writing began in elementary school when the passion for storytelling developed into a journey of writing. Over the years, she honed her craft for storytelling and the written word by excelling in subjects such as English and English literature. Over to you, Delizhia.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. So I'll be reading from a snippet from the Book of Maya, which is a prequel to the Vampire Hunters Academy series. And so here we go. Can everyone hear me? Okay, good. All right. The day my Uncle Kevin and my mother battled each other on the front porch of our Coven home was the last day that I would see him for several years to come. None of my Coven sisters spoke about that day, not even Hacienda. My mother continued with her daily routines as if nothing ever happened, as if her own brother did not exist. Surprisingly, though, she still allowed me trips to the park, provided I continued to study under the guidance of my sisters. It was my mother's wish for me to focus on voodoo rather than elemental magic or earth magic. And as a result, I began to spend less time with Hacienda. Business had also picked up exponentially, and nearly every week our coven hosted parties. Every weekend, especially before and after Mardi Gras. Men and women from all walks of life came to the House of Beauvais for mystery, excitement, and magic. Morgana specialized in tarot and past life readings, while Janelle offered assistance in root work, divination, and conjurings. Brielle for her skills in death magic and revenge spells, Beatrice for her workings with the ancestral realm and love spells, Camille for her elemental and powerful defensive magic, Hacienda's earth magic, curses, and binding spells, and finally, the all-powerful Marguerite Bouvet herself. There were other services that my Coven sisters provided, but only for the high money-paying rollers who were looking for more than just a stroke of luck or spell work. There were many a night I awakened to the strange grunts and howls that echoed into the hallways from some of the men who frequented our coven. And sometimes, if I woke up earlier than expected, I've witnessed a couple of overnight guests tiptoeing out of the front door. "These men have secrets," Annabelle whispered to me one morning. "Be sure to put down a protective barrier every night. Ask Janelle or Camille to help you with it." "What's wrong?" I asked. "Are these men dangerous?" "Most of them come here to be entertained by adults, your Coven sisters, but there is one who is aware of your presence. He wishes to visit you in your room one night." My eyes widened, and a hard knot began to form in the pit of my stomach. "What does he look like?" "Shaggy brown hair, a long crooked nose, and an uneven smile. He prefers the company of children," Annabelle said to me uneasily. "You have plenty of entities to call on to help you too. I am always watching over you." "Shouldn't I tell my Coven sisters or my mother?" I asked as I started to panic. I did not fully understand what Annabelle meant when she said that he prefers the company of children, but I could sense that it wasn't good. If anything, the dark tendrils of depravity wrapped themselves around me at the thought. The energy was sinister, and I began to consider the benefits of running away. But where to? I am shielded from them. They can sense the presence of my spirit, but they are unable to identify me for many reasons. One of those reasons being to protect you. The year and the time are quickly approaching for the gates to open, giving Samael the opportunity to escape. I don't want to be here anymore, I confess. Every day that I wake up, I'm scared. I know, and I wish this didn't have to be your story, but you are destined for great things, Maya. Put a protection spell over your room every night. If you ever have to leave your room in the middle of the night, I will be right there to watch over you. I will warn you when he is around. Your guardian Loa is Papa Legba. You can even call him just like Mel taught you. Okay. When Annabelle's voice disappeared, I became overwhelmed by the crushing reality of how alone I was. Granted, Hacienda and Camille were always there for me whenever I needed them. And of course, when Annabelle was around, it didn't always feel so bad because she was just a kid like me. The only other person who could really relate to me was Willow, but whenever we met up at the park, we could not talk about witch things or about our covens in front of the other kids. Periodically, she would send me a telepathic message to show me some of the moon rituals her coven was teaching her. I wanted so badly to show her my magic, but given the strength of my power surges, the last thing I wanted to do was hurt her. Plus, I had the sneaking suspicion that my mother would know. "Maya, are you ready?" Janelle asked as she rounded the corner and entered the kitchen. She stood in the doorway and patiently waited for me to slide down from the tall wooden chair. "Yeah, I'm ready," I said, mustering a smile. All right, it won't be too long. I have a busy schedule lined up with several clients. Do you think, let's see. Do you think Hacienda will be home today to take me to the park? I asked hopefully. No, I'm afraid not. Mistress has her out on a special assignment. She should be home soon. But come along, we've got a couple of hours. The rest of my day was spent helping my other coven sisters move things around in the house as my mother prepared for the night's entertainment. Special protective barriers were put down around our outdoor perimeter as word had spread quickly throughout the quarters that Marguerite Bouvet had become a household name, and that alone also put us at risk of drawing the unwanted attention of other dark covens and entities that wished to harm us. By the time everything was done and the daytime clients had finally left the house, I was exhausted. My spirits were instantly lifted the moment the front door swung open and the familiar greasy scent of charbroiled meat entered the foyer. Morgana strolled in, her smile wide with paper bags with Pete's signature cartoon logo of the owner's face. She had bought me a burger meal from the world-famous fast food restaurant that had served the people of New Orleans for 20 years. I don't understand how any of you could eat that wretched meat, my mother scoffed when she noticed Morgana coming in with the bag. That food is terrible. To my mother's dismay, me and Morgana loved it. I scarfed down the burger and the fries without shame. Slow down, Maya, Morgana giggled. You might choke, but I didn't. I had not eaten much all day, and Pete's signature aroma permeated the room and was an instant reminder that the peanut butter and jelly sandwich I had for lunch had run its course. Once I showered and climbed into bed, Annabelle's warning completely slipped my mind. As I nestled underneath the sheets, the loud jazz music blaring in the background, my thoughts drifted to my days spent at the park with Willow, Nancy, Lucy, and the others. It wasn't long before I was completely out, phasing in and out of every world the dreamscape had to offer, until I heard the latch turn on my door and the shadowy form of a thinly built man slipped in between the folds of darkness. I've been waiting for this, he whispered. Don't be afraid. I'm here to just play with you, little girl. Do you want to play a game? And that's my time.
Wow. Okay. Definitely going to have to grab that one. And we did post the link to Miss Jenkins' books over there in the chat. So you can certainly follow along and find out what happens next. What a great reading. Thank you so much. Our final reader today is Sarena Ulibarri. Sarena Ulibarri is a speculative fiction author from the American Southwest. Her short fiction has appeared in Lightspeed, Dreamforge, Solarpunk magazine, and elsewhere. And her novella, Another Life, will be released from Stellaform Press in 2023. She is also editor-in-chief at World Weaver Press. Take it away.
All right, I'm just going to read from the beginning of Another Life. When I arrived on the shaded communal balcony for my building's weekly potluck, my neighbors were talking about the results of their reincarnation analysis. Cindy Shao dropped a silver disc on the table in front of me before I even had the chance to sit down. Delizhia, you have to see this. Everyone shifted around the table to make space for me. I moved an algae lamp aside so I could better see what Cindy was trying to show me. She pushed a button and a holographic image of a stern-looking man rotated a few inches above the disc. I didn't recognize the name below his picture, but the death date was a few months before Cindy's birthday. You were an old white man? Cindy threw her head back and laughed. I know, isn't it hilarious? Here, look at mine, Alex said. Green lights flickered across the balcony as people showed off who they had been. Voices drifted from other buildings, nearly every balcony and patio in the small desert city of Otravita, alive with discussion and laughter. The lake glinted with the last light of the sun slipping behind jagged peaks, and a carbon capture drone passed through the pink and orange sky. Cindy's partner, Jackson, was one of the few without a silver disc. I loaded my plate, starting with the sun-roasted potato mix in front of him. You didn't get one? Jackson held up a hand so he could finish chewing before answering. The records from the gene vault only go back about 60 years. Cindy brushed a finger through the gray part of his beard, and he clacked his teeth playfully at her hand. You're not 60. I think he doesn't have a match because he used to be a house cat. Maybe that. He held his mason tea jar up in a mock toast. I don't believe in it anyway, he stage whispered to the rest of us. A lot of people weren't recorded in the gene vault, Mickey added. Back then, it was just the ones Thomas Ramsey could dupe into it. Mickey's face darkened the way it always did when that name came up. She took a bite, and with her mouth full, she said, "At least we know jerks like him are cockroaches now." "Do we know that?" I asked. My cousin Diego's research had moved so fast, and I didn't see him nearly as frequently as when his dad was alive. This was the most I'd heard about this project. Mickey shrugged. Diego proved reincarnation is real. Karma probably comes along with that. Obviously, I got an upgrade, Cindy said, so I must have been the sweetest old white man in the world. Jackson ducked away from a hornet that buzzed around the table. "I doubt karma's a simple reward and punishment system, though," he said. The hornet landed on the table and Mickey slammed a napkin onto it, rattling the pots and jars. Cindy gasped, "Mickey, that's so mean." "What?" Mickey held the smashed insect out on the napkin. Cindy squirmed away from it. "See, it's Ramsey." Mickey laughed raucously. Most of the others cast her a disapproving look, but we were used to her crass nature by now. Besides, no one was eager to defend either an invasive hornet or Thomas Ramsey, who was universally known and universally hated even more than 40 years after his death. This was the man who had declared climate change wasn't worth fixing because he had ships ready to take anyone who could afford a ticket to Planet B. Except it turned out there was no Planet B, and the only ship he had exploded on the launch pad. He'd conned millions of people out of millions of dollars, and the fallout of his scam had led to war, economic collapse, and an urgent overhaul of a carbon-heavy society. Cindy flapped a hand to get my attention. "Delizhia, you haven't gotten yours yet?" "What, my past life? No, not yet. Too busy, I guess." That was certainly true enough, though when I'd first heard about these reincarnation results, I'd assumed it was some new trend at the witching house. Now that I knew it was my baby cousin's newest science project, I was much more intrigued. Mickey tapped my arm with her elbow. "I bet you're busy. Heard you got a challenger this year." I swallowed a breaded jalapeno and patted my lips with a cloth napkin. "It's true. Tanner Mendocino has put in his bid to be mediator." It was the first time in the 20 years of our city's existence that anyone had run against me. Back when Otra Vida was founded, an election was as simple as a raising of hands. But nearly 2,000 people called this desert valley home now, so we were organizing a more formal process. "Who is that anyway?" Alex asked from down the table. "Is he a petitioner?" "Inheritor," Mickey said. "One of the kids? I don't remember a Tanner." "You probably knew him before he transitioned. He painted that mural on the South Dam." "Oh, right." Alex nodded and gave an appreciative laugh. "He sure had a glow up, didn't he?" "Well," Cindy said matter-of-factly, "I can't imagine it'll be much of a competition. Everyone loves Delizhia. She built Otra Vida." "No," I said, gesturing around the table. "All of you built Otra Vida." "But none of us would be here if not for you," Mickey said. "There's being politely humble, and then there's denying your legacy." I wrapped an arm around Mickey in a side hug. "If nothing else," I said, "Tanner's challenge will give people a second chance to let me know I still speak for them." Jackson raised his mason jar in a legitimate toast this time. Their way of life wasn't built for us, so we built another life. It was something I used to say a lot when our community was struggling for stability, and it had become something of an informal motto. Everyone on the balcony echoed the toast. Diego's workspace was near the North Dam, inside what we called the Mobius building. 2 elevated wheels connected by a long figure-8 hallway. It was one of Otra Vida's more unique buildings. Even though I was in a hurry, I couldn't resist taking the long way, climbing to the green roof first and winding down the spiral ramp into the center of one wheel. Following the figure-8 hallway, I passed a dozen doors sporting signs from other scientists, either warning to keep out or requesting research help. Many of these scientists were founders, part of the crew that Diego's father and I had rounded up when we first piped desalinated seawater into Death Valley. Others were petitioners, those who had come after the waterline was finished and the city was founded on the shores of our new artificial lake. Diego, now not quite 21, had been the first baby born in Otra Vida, the first of a generation we had dubbed the Inheritors. I knocked on the door and Diego answered, positioning half-moon glasses on his nose. A grin lit up his entire face. I wrapped his thin frame into a hug. "What are you doing here, Prima?" he asked. "I came to find out about this reincarnation thing you're doing." Of course. He waved me inside. So I will stop there, and from the description, you can tell that things don't go quite the way she hopes that they might.
Bravo. That was really intriguing. I loved getting the sense of their life and what it is that they're hoping for, I guess. I would be curious to see what happens next and how that all goes awry. So that concludes our reading for the day. I would like to thank everybody for coming, and especially to thank the authors for their fabulous readings.